Hi. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tomorrow for August 27th, 2023. So glad to have you all here. We got a lot to talk about today. We got SpaceX static firing. We've got India landing on the moon, maybe even a little bit about Russia smacking the moon into exoplanets that we can actually see. So we are officially up and running and very glad to have you all here today. My name is Jared. I'm going to be your host today, and we've got some delightful background music. You can keep it playing. I especially like it when the flute kicks in. The gas flute with that there. We also got Donna punching the show and Ryan joining us as our delightful expert as well. So Ryan, why don't we go ahead and get started? It got a little hot down in Texas, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. So this week has really become the week of SpaceX. We've got Starship doing stuff. We've got Starlink doing stuff. We've got Dragons doing stuff. But I'll start off with the static fire, because we got some delightful drone views from SpaceX as always through their Twitter feed. And yes, I'll still call it Twitter. Um, why am I zooming in? I can just go full screen. There we go. That looks wonderful. So it's just this test is kind of a follow-up test on the static fire they tried to do a couple of weeks ago. If you don't remember, that last test, they tried to ignite 33 engines, they only got to 29, and they only did it for half the duration that they expected. So, it's kind of, it's not the best test in the world, so they wanted to give it another go. They rolled it back to the production site, put the new hot staging ring on top, and then they gave it another go at the launch site. And according to SpaceX, everything seems to have gone pretty much to plan within launch commit criteria. Only 31 of the 33 engines managed to make it for the full duration. However, that's still within the launch commit criteria. I believe they can launch with 30 of a minimum of 30 engines. If they have 3 go out on the pad, I believe they're still able to launch. At least that was the criteria that they had for the first flight. So there you go. We've got many different angles from SpaceX. Also, the deluge plate doing a wonderful job as it's meant to, dispersing the heat energy away from the pad, making sure that no concrete really goes flying everywhere. Interestingly, there were a couple photos of concrete in places where it shouldn't be, but unlike last time when we had chunks that were like, the size of cars flying around, these were like, I'd say probably about that big, which is a little bit more manageable, just a few meters away from the pad. So overall, this test looked much more a much cleaner test compared to what we've seen before with this booster. It's really the process is going along smooth, and in my opinion, we could genuinely see a launch in a couple of weeks, which is just like crazy to think about.
Yeah, and it seems that, like I mentioned last week, all the right things that SpaceX needs to be doing, they're doing. They're really taking their time with this one. They're not saying, we've got a bunch of old Raptors, so let's just get them out the door. It
Yeah.
really feels like the effort is being put into Booster 9 and Ship 25 to actually make sure that it does a lot more than just start doing the cool spinning maneuver up in up in
Yeah.
the sky. And that's real. I think it's really good to see that there are 31 of the 33 Raptors working. I'm really much more interested in what's going to happen when they're not at half power, because if I recall correctly, that was only at 50% of the
Yeah.
throttle. So you're looking at what is it, 8 million pounds of thrust there, something like
Something.
that.
Well,
So
let's see what
it's
they.
a lot.
This test produced approximately 7.9 million pounds of thrust, 3,600 metric tons of thrust. So you double
Yeah,
that, and then you have 100% for just 31 of the 33 engines. So then you throw another couple engines in there as well, and you've got yourself a pretty powerful booster.
yeah, and I think that amps up the environment below at the orbital launch mount. So I'm going to be very interested to see how the deluge system handles that specifically, because it is still at 50%. It looks good, but it's still at 50%.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and 50%, that's half of 100%. So we'll have to
Hmm.
see. Again, this is all still testing, and in very specifically, this is all still testing that happens uh, in the public's eye. That was kind of something
Hmm.
that I was thinking about this week while watching this, which is the fact that SpaceX is really one of the few companies I could think of in aerospace that is, uh, how would I say it, actually doing it in a manner where you could stand at the fence and watch it if you wanted to. Everyone else is really not, which opens SpaceX up for a lot of criticism, which is something
Hmm.
that, you know, everybody and their mom on YouTube at least is doing. So, including us. Look at us go
Yes.
with this here. So,
My mom's not doing
uh,
it though.
that's true. So neither's my mom. So yeah. Anyways, Courtney Johnson has a really good point here, which is that double is a huge factor for engineering, and that's very, very true. When we start
Yeah.
increasing power and other things, um, sometimes you can end up getting quadruple the amount of energy and other things like that. So it really, really depends here on that plate. And as Darren Green is saying, so you can't really tell how this plate really is going to do in the real world. I think we can to a degree. I think we're
Yeah.
seeing that the plate in the deluge is working to 50% right now. As to
Yeah.
whether it's going to work to 100%, that's where the big question is. As to
Yeah.
whether that acoustic environment below in the orbital launch mount is going to be something that will not damage the engines and the engine area at the bottom of the booster. I feel like the jury's still out on that. But this
Hmm.
is why they want to fly.
Yeah. And there's a really interesting point you can see if you watch the first attempt of a static fire with Booster 9 compared to the second attempt of a static fire. Because the second one ran for the full duration, the plume it produced was so much larger. So you can just imagine if you then increase the amount of energy that's being transferred, you can just imagine how much larger it's going to be. I feel like there's still a big margin for energy to be dispersed in that plume because we've already seen between the two tests the difference in size, so I feel like there's plenty of room for it to go. There's plenty of energy to be dispersed. I feel like it should be able to cope from the progression that we've seen so far. If you follow that curve up, it seems like the further you go up, it should be able to match what the booster is doing.
Yeah, and
It also
oh,
kind
go
of
ahead,
depends
Zach.
on what you're considering to be 50%, because if you're talking about 50% fuel flow, that's different from 50% valves open, which is different from actual 50% thrust.
Yeah, so I guess even even in the terminology that we're getting from SpaceX, there's to roll the dice as to what you think they're talking about with that there. So I know that there was a very large debate on a certain social media platform this week as to what full duration actually means, which was very silly to see that happening, because as you go from company to company, full duration will have a uh, completely different definition with that there. So it's almost depends on who you ask, or I suppose depends on which Twitter account wants the most engagement this morning with that there. But Mayura Sakai is asking if the exhaust enters the holes on the plate, will there be a steam explosion or just rupture of the plate due to overpressure, or is the plate designed to handle something like that?
It's designed to send stuff out of it, not to have stuff come into it. So I think that the scenario where anything could enter would be when the booster is firing, and this plate fires much before and continues going much after the booster's Raptors have been firing. So I feel like the actual scenario for anything to enter, it'd be an incredibly rare scenario when something horrible has gone wrong and the plate hasn't fired, and then they fire the booster. But because they do that before, that scenario should never exist, because if the plate doesn't go, they're not then going to ignite the booster, because there's nothing to protect it. So I feel like that scenario shouldn't ever exist.
Yeah. And Mr. Huggy is saying that they're still having problems with it kicking up a lot of dust and sand outside the launch pad, which I'm sure is very annoying to anyone who puts a remote camera near that, or possibly parks their car
They need
near
somebody to
that.
sweep
So,
first.
yeah, let's bust out the brooms. I'll do it. I'll sweep those floor. I'll sweep that launch pad like Michelangelo painted. That there. And then Darren Green said, I feel like Darren Green's got a really good point here, which is that, but the static fire previous to the first test flight also made people think it was going to go good. That's true. And this is, again, as most of us here are, all three of us on the panel are involved in engineering of some sort, one way or the other. This is why you test. So,
Yeah.
and in SpaceX's case, Dutta, I think you put it really, really well once, which is that SpaceX very much believes in the concept of if you're not breaking stuff, you're not testing. So, yeah, this is kind of how they're operating. And like I said a couple minutes ago, they're really the only company that's doing it out in front of everybody, which makes them the one that everyone likes to talk about the most, which means that you can have people that know what they're talking about. You can also have a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about, but that's okay. So that's kind of how it goes. And Maddie's got a really good point, or actually a really good idea there, which is that let's let the robo dogs sweep. So let's get those Boston Dynamics dogs out there with little brooms and have them walk back and forth on there. So that would work out pretty well. But
just hope that the blast from the booster doesn't knock them over.
Just give them push broom mustaches, and they can just.
Yeah, I'm sure they could do that. Or maybe we could put 2 brooms on each shoulder, or 1 broom on each shoulder, so we got 2 of them, and then, yeah.
Space dog zoomies.
Yeah, exactly. It's space dog zoomies. Don't tempt me, Dada. Now you're going to make me want to design like a harness for my dog so that she can have a broom on her and get her to do her morning zoomies. Although both of my hounds are currently in their beds asleep. So much for domestication.
And the fluffier the dog, the better. The fluffier the dog, the better.
Okay, well, both of mine are fluffy, so
perfect.
So we're off to a great start. Although in this case, the concept of if you're not breaking stuff, you're not testing. No, we are not breaking anything with these tests. So, did you hear that it's time for you to work? Oh no, I'm sorry, bed's too hot. Just laying down now on cool hardwood floor. All right, so it wasn't
John's got a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Spray the area down with water to mitigate dust like they do on construction sites.
Yeah, that would work
and
out really
I saw
well.
that, and I thought, that's a brilliant idea. That's a really good idea. But every single time we've seen a test of the Fire X or the deluge system, it's left puddles of water everywhere. And within a few minutes, most of it's evaporated because this launch site is at the southernmost point of the continental United States, pretty much. It's the closest to the equator that you can get in the country, pretty much. It's very hot. The sun is very strong. The water isn't hanging around for long. So this is a good idea, but in practice, your water's probably going to evaporate before it has any chance to be useful.
Yeah, it's getting close to the equator like that. It's a bit of a mess in terms of stuff like that. So, good times. So our little static fire wasn't the only thing. Which, by the way, I don't know if anybody has said at SpaceX whether they're going to need another one or not. I haven't heard. I personally have not heard anything yet.
No, it doesn't look like it. It looked good enough for what they kind of were expecting, in my opinion.
Gotcha. So basically, we just need to get somebody out there with a pressure washer, wash it all off, and then we'll eventually work with it. Which I believe some of the licenses I've seen, at least coming from the FCC, hint at a date of mid-September, probably, for the launch, sometime around then, if I'm remembering the date on those licenses correctly.
The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, they've, I believe what they've essentially done is just extended their license that gives them permission to communicate with the rocket, and some local notice to mariners have been going out near Hawaii and Brownsville of hazardous areas potentially happening around September 8th, However, those aren't like, I don't believe they're official, not Mars to go through whatever system that is. I think they're just like local warnings and things like that. And they already put them out for August 31st, which is in like 3 days' time, and it's not launching in 3 days' time. So these are very provisional, very local things that are just like, hey, heads up, boat people, something might be happening, but nothing's confirmed just yet.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Maddie is asking, did we already talk about the ISRO moon landing? And we have not yet. We are doing the interesting thing called bury your lead, because we will talk about that. I 100% promise that we are going to talk about that. And we'll also talk about Russia's statement that they put out about Luna 25.
Yeah.
It was a solid one, let me tell you. And we're not done with SpaceX yet. We still got stuff to talk about. So,
do you want to move on to some crew stuff
Crew
then?
7.
We've got some crew stuff to talk about. First of all,
it's time to fly the meat.
I'll bring this one up for you, Data. We got some wonderful drone views. SpaceX loves their drones. Sunset drone or sunrise views of the pad with Crew Dragon Endurance on top of, I believe it was B1080 or B1081, something along those lines. Its first flight, brand new shiny booster with the worm and the meatball on the side of the second stage there. But this launch pretty much went off without a hitch on its second attempt. The first time around, we had a scrub pretty early into the count because of extra checkouts that they wanted to do with the life support system, basically the system that keeps the crew alive inside of the capsule. They wanted to take a little bit more time, just check out the system, make sure everything was going all right, and eventually, if I smoothly scroll up to here, we saw liftoff of Crew 7 on very early in the morning Eastern time, a bit more of a reasonable time of morning in Europe on Saturday, and this booster lifted off and delivered 4 crew members to the International Space Station. They docked just earlier before the show today. And interestingly, for Dragon, the 4 crew members on board, this was the first fully international crew. So each different person was from a different nationality. We had Jasmine Mugbeli, the commander from the US. We had Andreas Mogensen, the pilot for ESA from Denmark. We also had Satoshi Fukawa, I believe, from Japan. And then Konstantin Borisov on behalf of Roscosmos from Russia. I just realised that there you go. You can see them all smiling and waving, being very happy inside the capsule there. So if you see my mouse, there you go. There's Jasmine, Andreas, there's Satoshi, and Konstantin there inside the capsule. Looking very, very happy indeed, very excited to go. But even though they went off on the second attempt, not everything seemed to go kind of to plan. It doesn't look as if SpaceX has tweeted it, but the entry burn for the booster was much shorter than we were expecting. We were expecting, according to the timeline SpaceX gave us, like a 10-11 second entry burn. It was literally 1 second long, but it still managed to land back at the landing zone. So that seemed to be okay. We haven't got any official word whether that was not okay or that was an accident or anything like that. But it was certainly a lot shorter than we were expecting. And there was also another thing, in the final moments of the count, within the last 2 minutes of the count, there was a sensor in the crew access arm that had detected a little bit of the hypergolic fuel that is used within the Super Dracos on Dragon as a gas. Now, if you get a liquid fuel outside of the vehicle as a gas, that means you've got a leak. However, they went through all the sensors, went through historical data, and I believe they probably decided that this was just erroneous data because they went off with the launch anyway. And everything so far, all the way up to docking, has gone just to plan, and it looks good for the last mission of SpaceX's initial NASA contract.
Yeah, and what a amazingly successful program this has been. I do remember the early days of Commercial Crew. And a lot of people wondering if this is something that's actually going to end up paying dividends. And look at what it's done, at least on one side of it. So far, still waiting for the other half with Boeing and Starliner to kind of kick in and get it together with it there. But thank you, Donna. With that there, I appreciate that. Yeah, anytime now, whenever you'd like to Yeah, about that. So, yeah, and as Maddie is saying, it's been so industry changing. That is correct,
Yeah.
because it's not just allowed NASA to carry astronauts on their own, independent
Hmm.
of Roscosmos now to the International Space Station. It's also enabling private astronauts to go to the
Yeah.
International Space Station as well. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah,
For the first time
so
in history, private companies and individuals can literally buy their own vehicle into space. We've seen private astronauts uh, before, but we haven't seen anything like this where someone literally buys out all the seats on their own dedicated launch for a crew launch. That's never happened before, but yet with Inspiration 4, the Axiom space missions, the Polaris program, this vehicle, this program has allowed this new industry to begin developing of private individuals and companies purchasing their own way into space without having to rely on government agencies.
yeah, and it's one thing to buy the bar, when you're out and having a great night. It's another thing to buy the spacecraft, to buy the
Yeah.
seats out on the spacecraft that you're going to send everybody with. And actually, I was talking with a friend of mine about it before the launch, because they had actually been unaware that we had been launching crews on Dragons to the space station, and
Huh.
it was very very interesting at how surprised they were at the fact that you can now buy a seat to go work on the International Space Station. Because I think a lot of people think that the Axiom missions are just joyrides, but the people who are there on those Axiom missions are there to work, and they're putting in work, and they are
Hmm.
paying millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars for them to go up and work on projects up there. So yeah, this is a wild. This is not what I would have been expecting 10 years ago.
I
Hmm.
wonder if you can write that off as a charitable donation because you're donating your time, you're doing scientific research, and basically you're covering the cost of you being there, right?
Yeah, maybe you could write that off on your taxes. So I mean, what was Hughes and RCA and all the other companies doing with their mission specialist programs on shuttle in the early '80s? Like, were they?
Yeah.
I don't know. Were they writing those off? Were they? I don't. Were they even paying that for that at that time? So I don't. I do not know. And I would think if anybody here would know, it would probably be you, Detta, since shuttle is your
Oh
is
no.
your child. So your first child. Um,
My first love,
yes,
not my
that's
first
true.
child.
That's true. Okay, okay, all right. We all remember our first. Yeah. So, but yeah, um, yeah. Just what a completely different era of space flight this has become. So, and as
Yeah.
Bennett, of course, is reminding us here in the United States, accountants, the backbone of the economy. So
I also
it's
think
pretty good.
I forgot to mention before, but this was the first RTLS mission for a NASA crew mission. We saw it with Axiom 2 earlier in the year. It was kind of like a proof of concept to see if they could bring the first stage back to the landing zone for a crew mission, and they could. And all of this is possible because of, the SpaceX constantly makes minor tweaks, improves efficiency, improves performance. These RTLS missions for crew flights are now possible because SpaceX has gotten so much data from all of these Falcon 9 flights that they can see where they're losing performance, and just minor tweaks can bring that performance to assist them in getting to orbit, which then means they don't have to use more propellant on the first stage, so they don't have to do a drone ship landing, so they can bring it back to the launch site and therefore bring down recovery times. Because if you're landing at the launch site, your transport is much quicker to, say, Roberts Road, which you just put it on the back of a truck and drive it down the road, compared to having to bring a drone ship back to port, which can take a few days. Then you've got to offload it onto a truck, and then you've got to drive it to the factory. It makes the process so much more simpler for recovery, and then this also means missions like these make the cadence much more increased. SpaceX
Yeah.
initially said they were going to hit 100 this year. I don't think they'll hit 100 this year, but it's still an insane number to think about. It's a world. It will be a world record number of flights from a single operator in a year. It's gonna be absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And maritime assets suck.
Yes, a certain CEO has said that very publicly before.
I mean, it's true, they do, but sometimes
Yeah.
it's the best tool to do the job. But if you can bypass having to use that tool, that saves you a whole bunch of money and saves you a whole bunch of schedule, and maritime assets suck.
Yeah. In our chat room is very much like, was that entry burns, that super short entry burn supposed to be super short? And I suppose we'll find out down the road.
Yeah.
Although, do understand SpaceX is a private company, so it is most likely at their discretion as to whether you will ever find out whether it was supposed to be that short or not. Also, just want to say a comment from Simon Anthony, since we were talking about Axiom Space, that Cam Gaffarin, the boss of Axiom, has just had triple bypass and is recovering well. So Cam, good luck, good speedy recovery to you on that. And there's been this has just been a very interesting decade to have watched space flights. I know myself and Dutta, who have been in space for a very long time, in one capacity or another, other than just simply being on the Earth. This has been pretty interesting, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, I wonder if the 1 second burn instead of was it 10 seconds?
The timeline they put
return?
on their website said 10 to 11 seconds. That's kind of what they're aiming for. And then we see 1 second, and then no one in the press conference asks about it. So, we don't really have an answer on that.
I wonder if they ramped up their thrust profile so that they can get a speedier return, and they've got performance that they can prove, or tests for other aspects of their business.
Yeah, this was a fresh booster, so they might have thought, maybe we can subject it to some more forces than we typically would, and if the boosters lost on RTLS, no big deal. So it's a fresh one, so who cares?
God, can you imagine if we lose this one? It's no big deal.
Well, if we lose, I would like to emphasize, if we lose this one on entry. So
yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I know that people at SpaceX are very much like on the safety aspect of things. That has been very clear.
No, for sure.
The start. So,
at that point, the mission is done. They've sent they've sent the meat into space, and if you lose it on return, no big deal. But that's quite a paradigm shift from boosters being expendable to boosters being reusable and returning to land, so that we can save costs and use them again. And now, maybe it's no big deal if we lose one.
Well, they've got a lot of boosters. They can do whatever they just spend however you need to, I guess, right? That's how that works.
I've got a lot of kids, but I don't want to lose one.
Especially on RTLS, you don't want to lose your kid returning to the launch site or landing site or dinner site. I don't know. So I don't know. Oh man, I still was quietly hoping. I'm pretty much done hoping for it now, but I've always quietly hoped that they would have named their boosters just as they would their drone ships. But that didn't end up happening. So I just thought it would have been funny to hear a bunch of these names being called out during flights, but wishful thinking on my part, I suppose. So, but yeah, and then we also had a quick Starlink launch this week too, right?
That's not what I want to show. Let's scroll up again.
Did I catch you off guard there, Ryan?
Yeah, it's fine. I've got it here.
As someone heavily involved in astronomy, we don't have to talk about Starlink if we want to. So just throwing that out there. So.
It was, I'd say it was just pretty much another bog standard Starlink that we got, and a Slick 40, another of the 22 mini satellites going up. This wonderful streak shot here on behalf of SpaceX. Just, there's not really much more you can add. when
Yeah.
all of the launches are pretty much exactly the same. So, I believe this booster was also flying for like a 15th time or something along those lines. I may be wrong, but something like that sounds about right. They really like to try and push the envelope with these Starlink missions. Let's see if this booster can fly for a stupid number time and see if it works. And it does. So there you go.
Yeah, I believe the boosters are now cleared to fly up to 20 flights each, and we'll see if there's further clearance after that for them to continue on. But very, very cool. And then we weren't just talking about landing in Florida in interesting different ways that's been done, but we also had a landing off of the Earth this week as well. So, a little country you may have heard of called India, who is actually incredibly good at spaceflight. The Indian Space Research Organization is no pushover when it comes to the work that they do. They successfully landed on the moon this week.
And I believe it was done for a pretty cheap price as well. It was like $65 million or something, which is less than, movies are made for. And to consider that they landed a spacecraft on the moon with a rover on it, as well as having an orbiter now around the moon, for $65 million, just seems like a baffling sum of money for such a data-rich mission. Just why can't NASA have such a good, money to reward ratio? I don't understand how ISRO could do this stuff so much cheaply, but yet kind of get a similar result.
Ryan, first I want to say don't give Congress any ideas. Don't let Congress have that thought. They're already having not great thoughts as it is. So, ISRO has this amazing ability to come in and show everybody how to get things budgetarily, how to get things done, and it's definitely appreciated in seeing that happens. As Darren Green is saying, not dealing with subcontractors. That's sure. Yeah, I'm sure it's I'm sure it's that. I'm sure it's just that, or underpaid. Yeah, that too. With that, it kind of all depends on how that works. But the Chandrayaan-3 mission basically had several primary objectives. One of them is getting the lander to the surface of the moon safely. The other is demonstrating a rover's driving capabilities on the moon, and then the other is to conduct experiments on the materials that are on the lunar surface so that we can understand that better. And I'm very excited about all of those because, one, it's landed, so that's like great. Two, it's deployed its rover and it's starting to begin to move around for the time that it will have left on there, because the lander and the rover are only supposed to last one lunar day, and that's daylight. So that's about 2 weeks total. So I think we've got about 10 days left for the Chandrayaan-3 lander and rover. But I'm really super excited about the composition, because not only was this the first time India landed something on the moon, this was also the first time we've ever had anything land intact at the south pole of the moon. And that is a place that everybody is interested in because of the potential for water on the moon. Now, somebody in our chat or in our comments for last week's show asked about, why does everybody care about water on the moon? Well, it's very important because there's a lot of things you can do with water. First of all, water is water. You need it to survive, right? You need it to hydrate yourself. In addition to that, if you wanted to, say, grow plants in a lunar base or something like that, you could use it to keep your plants watered. You get so excited you can wet your plants when you're up there on the moon. Yeah, thanks, Dada. I know you like that one. Also, water what can you do with water? Like, what are some things you could do with water? You guys got do you know anything else you could do with water?
I'm gonna
Well, if you
guess
separate
that,
it, you can get hydrogen and oxygen, and that's what the space
yeah,
shuttle was fueled with.
yeah,
Mm.
a couple hydrogen
Hyd-
atoms and an oxygen atom. They sound pretty useful for, let's say, fuel and breathing.
yes, fuel and breathing. So we could actually make atmosphere out of that there. Also, where is a hydrolox or a hydrogen liquid oxygen engine most efficient? Is it in atmosphere or is it in vacuum?
I believe it is in vacuum, and
Yes.
I think that's what the moon is, and I think
Yes.
that Blue Origin's lander might also be using hydrogen for some things as well. So that this all seems to be kind of useful.
No way. No way. That's right. So you could use it for your rocket fuel. You could use it for your breathing atmosphere. Also, water, we use that in industrial processes, right? So if you're going to build stuff on the moon and you need water to do it, like you have some sort of water jet cutter or mixing chemicals in water or other things like that, there it is. So you don't have to take thousands of tons of water with you to the moon. Just use what's there. So we call that in situ resource utilization. So that is like one of the holy grails of keeping people in places or on surfaces, either planetary or moon or asteroid, wherever you want them to be at. With that,
For the
so
for the finest, sharpest, cleanest edges, I only do my water jet cutting with water and lunar regolith.
that's very true. It should be, a lot of the things that we would often have difficulty with here on Earth in manufacturing, we can get rid of that because we could just do it in a vacuum up on the moon. Now that obviously is simplifying the industrial processes with that there in terms of purity and getting things to be able to be much better in manufacturing terms, a product, a result of what we're working on at least. The moon is great for that because you have the vacuum, but it's still very difficult to convert things that we do in atmosphere here on Earth to a vacuum up on the moon. But still, so that's what we're going to try to do.
Maddie had an interesting comment about the cost for this mission, and she asks, "Does ISRO have to distribute their production and support systems across the portions of their country that pay the most to the politicians?"
Don't know. That's a great question. So,
Yeah.
well, here in the
That's probably
U.S.,
why our missions are so expensive.
yeah, I was going
Yeah.
to say, should I honestly answer that here in the United States, or do I want to still be able to enjoy access to to these things? Because that's a very good point for here in the United States. I guess that's how I'll say that. But yeah, so Chandrayaan 3 is loaded with payloads. There's a thermophysical experiment, which is going to measure the thermal conductivity and temperature of the lunar surface. There's actually a seismometer on board, which is going to measure the seismic activity around there. There's also another probe that's going to be measuring the plasma density around the surface of the moon as well. Excuse me, and then the rover actually has an X-ray spectrometer on board, and then also a laser spectroscope as well. So it's going to be able to really figure out the really break down what exactly is the surface of the moon in this area made out of, and other things like that. So I think I'm most excited about what can come from the rover, simply because that's going to tell us about things like distribution of water and metals and other things like that. And that's sort of what we've all been wanting to know since the 90s, when it was speculated and then eventually confirmed through several missions that there was water on the moon.
Hone has a good question for you, Jared. Has it not evaporated yet?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Hone. So how is it not evaporated yet? Which I know I know a lot of people would be like, dumb question. Okay, let me ask. But no, not a dumb question at all. The water that we're looking for on the moon, um, it can survive at a molecular size, if you will, um, as bonded with parts of lunar regolith, and then you kind of would bake it out, if you will. I know we're gonna go to the moon and we're gonna get baked, basically, right? So sounds like a good
Well,
idea.
it's
Um,
it's still frozen, right?
so two different ways that it would be. It would be bonded in that way, so you would have a hydrate. So like here on Earth, you can have certain elements plus like 3, 4, 6 H2O, and that's like a hydrate, like a sodium hydrate or something like that. We do find those on the moon. Usually metals and things like that will have a hydrate attached to them. But inside of the moon's craters, there are some very interesting things that happen with the moon's craters, specifically at the north and south pole of the moon. Now, the moon, it does orbit the Earth, and its orbit is tilted a little bit relative to the Earth, just a few degrees. So why we don't have a lunar or a solar eclipse every time the moon goes around the Earth. But the moon its axial tilt, or the tilt of its north and south poles, is relatively itty bitty. It's not very big at all, a couple degrees. And because of that, there are actual portions of the moon inside of those craters at the north or south pole of the moon where they are low enough that the sun does not get high enough in the sky to actually go over the edge of the crater. You get these deep areas that are in eternal darkness and have been for billions of years. So you end up getting what are called cold traps. So these are places where those hydrated water molecules can actually end up sort of forming and coming together and depositing themselves over time. And you give it a couple of billion years, and you get these really big deposits of water ice inside of these craters. Now, there were several missions on Artemis 1 with the CubeSats that were supposed to help us answer this. And there was even one that was supposed to try to take images of it, but it seems that just about every single CubeSat on Artemis 1 has failed in one way or another. So we're going to have to wait a little bit longer for that, for direct confirmation. But yeah, it is literally just the fact that there are these eternally dark areas deep within craters on the moon that are so cold that you can have water remain ice there, and the water that disassociates ends up finding itself in those cold traps and depositing itself on top of more and more ice with that there. I do want to point out that we also know that this is true on Mercury as well. We do know at the poles of Mercury, at its north and south poles, there are also water ice deposits there as well. And think about how close Mercury is to the sun, where its side of the sun, side that faces the sun, gets up to 800 degrees Fahrenheit, which I'm messing up in what metric units that would be right now. 400 Celsius, somewhere around there. Up there goes Ryan doing
426 Celsius.
Thank you, Ryan. Always got my back. So I know Venus is like 450 Celsius. But there you go. So 425 around there Celsius. And they've still got water ice at the poles there. So yeah, it's possible to pull that off. Also, I do want to point out, too, on the moon, there are these very cool things called peaks of eternal light that also exist at the south and north pole of the moon. And these are peaks near like the rims of these craters or large mountainous areas that are always in sunlight as well. So you could stick a solar array up there and constantly have power throughout lunar night if you wanted as well. So in case you don't want to, go the nuclear option of running your lunar base on a nuclear reactor or whatever, or kilo power fission system or whatever you want to call it, you could do it that way. So, but also like nuclear in space, you're going to have to do it eventually, so just do it. So,
What if I just want to make moon pies?
What's up?
What if I just want to bake moon pies?
Well, you're gonna need a kiln for that, because I think it's gonna be a little different than an oven on the moon with that, right? And then also you're gonna need that water. You're gonna need to melt that water, and you're gonna have to get the right amount of syrup and carbon dioxide to add to the water, so that way you have RC cola there. Because you cannot have moon pies unless you have RC cola. That is a fact. So, just so everybody's aware.
I think I'm going to vomit. Moving on.
I was going to say, in case anybody doesn't know, that is, I suppose, an American spaceflight tradition, moon pies and RC cola. And there have been, me and Dutta have been at conferences where eating contests involving those have begun, and I've actually been in one before, and it really is, it's something, that's for sure. Maddie says, why RC Cola? It's because that's a very widely drank cola in the southern United States, and that's where a lot of spaceflight stuff happened. Crewed spaceflight stuff happened.
Because it tastes the best with moon pies.
By the way, I'm just going to throw this out there. I like RC Cola best out of like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and RC Cola. It's RC Cola. So, and I am proud to be wrong, let me tell you. So Pepsi, no thank you. Coca-Cola, sure, if you got it. RC Cola, great. There is a restaurant near me, a southern restaurant that has RC Cola only, and that is correct. Moving on, because there's a little bit more. I did just want to talk a little bit about Luna 25 and its lithobraking, regolithobraking, I think we eventually termed it last week, which was eventually confirmed by Roscosmos with this statement, if you would like me to read it out to you here, which said on August 19th, in accordance with the flight program of the Luna 25 spacecraft, an impulse was provided for the formation of its pre-landing elliptical orbit. At about 14:57 Moscow time, communication with the Luna 25 spacecraft was interrupted. The measures taken on August 19th and 20th to search for the device and get into contact with it did not produce any results. According to the results of a preliminary analysis, due to the deviation of the actual parameters of the impulse from the calculated ones, this is my favorite bit, because this is definitely a portion of a sentence that's been lost in translation, but it just comes out really, really well. The device switched to an off-design orbit and ceased to exist as a result of a collision with the lunar surface. Specially formed interdepartmental commission will deal with the issues of clarifying the reasons for the loss. Wait, hold on. It doesn't say the loss of Luna 25. It says deal with the issues of clarifying the reasons for the loss of the moon. So not only did we lose Luna 25, not only did it cease to exist, we've also lost the moon. So
translation. It's a wonderful thing. So what I think happened there, because I noticed that as well when I was translating it to put on statements and things. What I think, because it's called Luna 25, your favourite translating service decided that Luna 25 meant the moon. So it said that the moon now ceased to exist, which is not the case. The moon does still exist. It is the spacecraft which has ceased to exist.
Nice. Elsa, thank you, Jared, who's not me, for upgrading your membership. Cheers to you for cheers to you for that. I just thought that would be interesting to throw in there, because somebody was talking last week about us laughing about them. That obviously it is very much a big bummer, because there was going to be a lot of data that was going to come from it. I believe they were also carrying a small rover from the United Arab Emirates, which this is like their second time they've tried to get a small rover on the surface of the moon, and man, it's just really like tough. I think it just goes to show that it's really, really tough to do stuff in space, and also it's really, really tough as well when you're 2 or 3 generations removed from doing things like this as well. I think that's a great example for why we would even be having problems here in the United States with us getting ourselves back together on that front. So yeah, um, it's hard. I know we try to shy away from saying space is hard, but it is. It's really difficult. So
It's difficult to say that it isn't hard because it is, and it's repetitive to say that it is hard, but it is. So there's no way around it because time and time again with situations like these, we're reminded that it's not a stroll in the park to try and land on the moon. Just why if your burn lasts a few seconds longer than it was meant to, your orbit
yep,
could be drastically different, and that switches it from being in a stable parking orbit around the moon to crashing into it. This is just that's everything we're playing with thousands of kilometers from home.
yeah, your paraloon or paraselene, whatever you want to call it, suddenly becomes negative altitude. And I don't know if you know this, but typically not allowed to have negative altitude and still have a mission afterwards. So
Yeah.
And that's
it's frowned upon.
and that's one of the benefits of having humans in the loop at the time, because you have to program computers to be able to deal with these anomalies and off nominal situations in a heartbeat. And the time delay between us and the moon is so great that you can't even intercede or deviate the plan
Yes.
in any way to be able to save the mission, because
Yep.
by the time that your signal gets there, it's too late.
Yeah, the velocities when you're at the moon are usually in the time it would take those signals to return, roughly was it 2.5, 3 second round trip, where we've already moved a couple kilometers in that time. So it's a lot, and we talked about that last week about the idea of humans in the loop, and if Apollo 11 had been a computer controlled mission, uh, would it have actually landed? Because there was that expertise of Neil seeing that the landing site that the computer was going for was not going to be suitable to put a lunar module down, and he took manual control. Buzz helping him out as the lunar module pilot as well with that, and got them safely to the surface of the moon. So, and actually Bennett right there saying that the lunar lander pilots were underrated compared to the computers. I think there's also a bit to be said about the computing power that you had in the 1960s. I mean, after all, if you left the rendezvous radar on, you kind of screwed up the computer a little bit. I'm sure that wouldn't be too much of a problem nowadays with the amount of power that you could work with. But ultimately, it worked, and that's the
Hmm.
critical component of it. So very, very good, and congrats to ISRO for doing so good.
Yeah.
Looking forward to
Yeah.
those results coming down. So,
And
all
also,
right,
this is something I haven't prepared for in advance, so I'm now going to awkwardly search up Israel on Twitter. But also, I wanna commend them because their public outreach, not only for their native audience, but also internationally, has been really good. They've had so many updates over the mission, the course of the mission, from for many aspects. We've had graphics, we've had number information, we've had videos such as this one of the rover driving off of the lander. So
yeah,
their
this is
public
great.
outreach in order to inform people around the world of this is it's really good, and I think everyone else should be aiming for this kind of outreach as well. And
Wow, look at that.
the Prime Minister of India as well also said in his statement after the landing was confirmed to be a success, said that this isn't a success for India, this is a success for the world. And I really feel like their outreach through their socials and whatnot really does kind of prove that.
That's amazing.
Because, they are sharing this with everybody, which is great.
Yes, yeah, and I believe this is the actual landing footage that they got out very, very quickly after it. Ryan, are you prepared for me to throw some shade?
What have we got?
would be cool if the European Space Agency had outreach this good.
We do. What's it called?
Who?
Let's find out. ESA.int. And then let's see if we can find it. Where is it?
Hey, how come I can't get the data from one of the instruments from Rosetta still? Why does the PI still have it?
ESA Web TV. Here you go. We're watching trees.
A constant complaint. Trees.
This is we've got brilliant public outreach from ESA because we're looking at trees. Well, actually,
I was going to say the bark. I should not. Okay, maybe I have opened a can of worms here that I shouldn't have, but that's okay. I could play Jamie today. I was just about to say you had. We were talking about bark beetles there, and I was like, oh, we have that problem here in California too, and. Oh, right. Yeah, we use satellite assets just like you probably do. Yeah. Oh. So, yeah. Well, look at that. Maybe I should use websites.
They're useful. They're very helpful.
Are they? Are they though?
Yeah, very helpful.
Sure? Are we sure about that? I'm not so sure.
I don't think you're ready. There's a lot of information there.
Yeah. Many photos. Many photos. Also, okay, this is something that only me and other members of the media will have probably noticed, but I just want to give a big thank you to ESA because they've updated their old media login portal for their photo library. Before, I'd have to press the connection button many times before it'd actually let me in. Now, there's no connection button at all, just lets me right in. It's wonderful. Thank you very much, ESA. I appreciate it because it means I can now get to photos even quicker.
Oh boy, do I feel much smaller than my little circle down at the bottom of the screen there all of a sudden. So, yeah. Anyways, Ryan, did you have anything else for this week?
That's pretty much it. Thank you,
right.
ESA, for their photo library, so it'd be less buggy.
Dada, how about you? Did you have anything for this week?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I just wanted to
I've been heads down in job searching.
Yeah. Well, that's good, and we're very proud of you, Dada, for that. So, all right. So I wanted to show something, which is this. So, do you guys see it? Isn't it cool looking? It's a star under. It's a big star in a dark spot.
That's not what stars look like.
It is not. So this is visual representation looking at it, but this is some
this
results.
This is shenanigans.
Shh. So this is a star called Betapictoris, and this is some results that actually came out this week. Which look at that X, and look at it go across. And what is that? What y'all think that is?
A moon.
Not a moon. No,
a planet orbiting?
It is a planet orbiting the star Betapictoris. So that is a planet which is named Betapictoris b, which has 13 times the mass of Jupiter. It's about 1.5 times the larger than the diameter of Jupiter as well. So it's a pretty big planet, and it orbits it orbits Betapictoris about once every 21 years. So this is 17 years worth of data, all combined into a time lapse, and it's pretty amazing that they've been able to put this together. Yeah, Patrick, that's no moon. Indeed, it isn't. And GTH 042 saying that's one bright planet. And yeah, it is. But I also want to remind everybody that this is 63 light years away from us. So this is actually really, really long. And Maddie is asking, how long was this video recorded over? Well, this is 17 years worth of data, 17 years worth of imagery from it. And you can actually see that at one point, the telescope that is taking the data gets a major upgrade in the early 2010s, right there in 2013. It gets a major upgrade to its systems, which makes it look a lot better. So which way is it rotating? From our perspective here, the planet is appearing to go counterclockwise or anti-clockwise around the star. So now it's in front of the star, and now it's continuing its orbit around, and it's continuing to behind the star, and then it pops out the other side, and there it is. Now, I thought this was spectacular, which was in reading the paper, they said, this is great, but in order for us to get a full, to make the full time lapse of this doing one full rotation, we still need 6 more years of data in order to do this. So we've still got 6 more years for them to work on this, which is absolutely ridiculous. But I think it's amazing that they've been able to do it. Now, trying to image an exoplanet is ridiculously difficult.
An exoplanet orbiting a star, and the orbit is, what, 23 years?
It's about 21 years, but they want those 6 so that way they can get it, because you lose it pretty quickly. And then we're able to actually, you can see that once 2011 comes around, that we can actually cut down on the area around the star that is being blocked for the light. And then once 2013 comes around, then we can really cut down on it. So by 6 years from now, we should have significantly better technology that we should be able to have the whole orbit, if you will, except for when the planet goes directly behind behind relative to us, the star that we can see. So that's pretty.
Do they have a reference for how big that star is and how big that planet is and how big the planet's orbit is?
Yes. So first of all, this is all happening 63 light years away from us. Betapictoris is about 75% more massive than our sun is. So it's about 1.75 times the mass of our sun, which actually means it ends up being about 9 times brighter than our sun is. And it actually has 2 planets, Betapictoris B and Betapictoris C. Now, this is Betapictoris B, and we're able to see it because it is 9 astronomical units away from Betapictoris in its orbit. So in terms of astronomical, so the Earth's orbit to the sun is 1 astronomical unit, so 9 times the distance that the Earth orbits. And then also, this thing is 1.5 times larger than Jupiter, so this is big. And because it is bigger than Jupiter, and this star is very luminous, very, very bright, Betapictoris B is able to reflect a ton of light, and that's why we're able to see it so effectively here. Betapictoris C orbits close enough to Betapictoris that it is basically within the shine of the star, and we can't cut down on it like that, unfortunately. But yeah, this is just like amazing. Like this is direct imaging of an exoplanet in orbit, and we've been doing it long enough with the right technology that we've actually been able to get most of its orbit in view here. So, but by the end of this decade, we'll actually have a full data set that will allow us to see a full orbit around this star with this planet.
Is this the first time we've been able to do this, Andy Law asks?
No, actually, there was another one I wanted to bring up that I wanted to show everybody. That was from a while ago, actually. So give me a moment just to pull this up here. Now, this is from. Oops, work that there. All right, so this is. It's a lot easier when you're not having to do it live on air. So this is from a system called HR8799. Again, we're so creative when we name things. So, and HR8799 is very well known because it is a multi-planetary system. And we have imaged it over the course of about, I think it's 12 years, roughly. And it has an incredible time lapse that I now have up and available for us to look at. There are multiple planets. There are four visible planets in this image right here, and we can actually see them orbiting around this star. So as you can see, this was from a while ago. We started observing this in 2009 with that there. So yeah, this is not the first time we have ever actually looked at or been able to see an exoplanet directly. So
It looks like a big star too, 20 AU.
yeah, well, this is a big system. So yeah, this star HR 8799 is about 1.5 times the mass of our own sun and about 5 times more luminous with that there. So, which by the way, these I just looked it up real quick because I wanted to make sure on that. But these are actually the first exoplanets that had their orbital motion confirmed via direct imaging. So there you go. Here's your first batch that had them here. And Mr. Huggy is asking something that actually several of you are asking, which is what happened to Betapictoris A? Where did Betapictoris A go? Well, Betapictoris A is the star. When we discover exoplanets, we assign them letters that start at B and then further down the alphabet. So that's how that goes. So the star is A. So the star would technically be Betapictoris A. But we're not going to call it that. We just call it Betapictoris. So, and then the planets would be Betapictoris B, which is the first planet they discovered, and then Betapictoris C, which is the second exoplanet that gets discovered in that system. And we go further down the line. So yeah, pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
I like it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Oh, Michael Dakin, I like that one, which is maybe you should.
How neat is that?
How neat is that? That's pretty neat. Michael Dakin, I like that comment, which is maybe you should let Rocket Lab name them. So, which would be pretty good. Yeah, I would definitely love to do that one there. But yeah, isn't this cool? Like, this is a solar system with 4 planets, and we've been able to actually look at them and see them in motion. Like, wow, what a time to be alive! So that's so cool. Anyways, that's my nerding out about astronomy this week that I could do for a long period of time because Jamie's not here. So, if we don't have anything else, I would like to wrap up our show by thanking, of course, all of you amazing members and supporters of Tomorrow. We cannot do this without you. I think that is pretty apparent that for with many of you, but if I can find my words here correctly, that we can't do this without all of you, and we are forever appreciative of your contributions to help make us continue through this wild world of spaceflight. And if you would like to help make the shows, soon to be shows of tomorrow, continue on, head on over to youtube.com/TMRO/join, and that would be where you can do it. It literally is as little as 99 cents a month to become a system support, a quarter of a cup of coffee. And of course, we want to thank NeuroStream, our Tomorrow Model 33 Plaid Pro Plus member. NeuroStream, thank you so much for helping us out here on the show. Now, next week, we're still figuring it out. We're going to have a show, but we don't know how the show is going to happen.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. So, yes. I don't know if I should say it or not, simply because I don't want to curse it or anything from not happening. But it will be spectacular
one way or the other.
Yeah, we did get invited to go do a show somewhere live. So should I just outright say it, or because I don't want to end up I don't want to jinx it. That's the thing.
What if we stop talking, we go to the member show, and then you carry on talking?
Oh yeah, we could do that. I'm sure if it's in the member show, we won't jinx it. So if you want to, now would be a great time to become a member, and we'll talk about it there. Thanks, Ryan. Great plug. We'll see everybody next week. Have a good one. See you in the members show if you want to know. If you want to know, would you like to know more? So,
Ooh,
then
secretive.